Welcome back to ScreenRant, true believers! Marvel first created their cinematic universe in 2008 with Iron Man. Before then, they had dipped their toe into the filmmaking pool, but only by selling or renting their properties to other production companies. Now, 11 years later, the MCU is a powerhouse in cinema, and each movie feels loaded with Easter eggs. From the Iron Man film and all the way up to the recent Avengers Endgame, we pause, rewind, and screenshot all these hidden gems. While some help set up future movies and storylines, today we're going to take a look back and point out all the hidden Easter eggs that haven't led to anything. So, let's get started. In the Asgardians' first cinema outing, the 2011 Thor film gave us a glimpse into Odin's vault. One item in particular that stood out was the hallowed Infinity Gauntlet, complete with all the stones. But since Thanos had the gauntlet and was gathering the stones, how did Odin have it? Well, in Thor Ragnarok, Hela found her way into the vault. Here, she remarked that the gauntlet and stones were fake as she knocked it over. But why did Odin go to the trouble of having a fake Infinity Gauntlet in the vault? No idea. And with Thanos wreaking havoc with his gauntlet, we probably won't find out. Near the end of Iron Man 2, Nick Fury was dangling the possibility of joining the Avengers in front of Tony Stark's face. In the background, we can see a huge map. Two locations in particular got the fans curious. One of those locations was Wakanda. Thanks to Black Panther, that reference led somewhere. However, the other hotspot was in the middle of the ocean. Marvel fans will know this as the underwater city Atlantis. With Namor's film rights being a confusing mess with Universal, we might not be hearing Namor shout Imperious Rex on the big screen for a long time. Thor Ragnarok is the next film on our Easter egg hunt. We're treated to a scene where we see the building the Hulk is living in on Sakaar. This building pays tribute to a host of former Gladiator champions. We see Man-Thing, the god of war Ares, Bi-Beast, and everyone's favorite Corbinite, Beta Ray Bill. This has excited fans as this means these characters exist in the MCU. However, there has been no sighting of them, or any mention since. Well, besides from one that we'll get to later. Maybe one day we'll get to see the clash of gods, Thor versus Ares. Obadiah Stane has a great respect/obsession for the art of chess in the comics. So much so that he created a villainous team with a chess gimmick. They were called the Chessmen. What a horrifying name! Stane built this motley crew in order to bring down Tony Stark. In Iron Man, we see Stane's passion for chess scattered throughout his home. In particular, as he watches Rhodey on TV, Stane has a chessboard in front of him, showing his chess desire and perhaps his next plan. If you've seen Iron Man, you'll understand why that's unlikely for Stane. The 2008 Incredible Hulk film brought us the joy of Ty Burrell playing Leonard. To the non-Hulk comic reader, the name Leonard will mean very little. However, the character is Leonard Skivorsky, who will later become a Hulk villain, and sometimes friend Doc Samson. All Burrell is missing is long green hair and superpowers. With the Hulk now in the Avengers and portrayed by Mark Ruffalo instead of Edward Norton, it's unlikely that Doc Samson will be the next big bad for the Hulk. In a blink and you'll miss it moment during the opening sequence of The Incredible Hulk, we see a number of comic characters referenced. As classified documents are shown, we see names like Nick Fury and General Ross. But one in particular will stand out to comic fans. The Hulk's sidekick, Rick Jones's name pops up for a moment. With Mark Ruffalo's Hulk never mentioning Rick Jones in any of the MCU films he's appeared in, it's unlikely that Jones will grace us with his presence, especially now that Black Widow has taken on the job of keeping the Hulk in line. Tony Stark was being his arrogant, lovely self during the congressional hearing in Iron Man 2. As Rhodey is called up to provide evidence, Stark drops an interesting Easter egg. He states that if he was offered the position of Secretary of Defense, he would accept. Why does this matter? Well, in the comics, Stark was actually appointed in this position briefly. Unfortunately, Avengers Disassembled happened, and Stark had to resign due to the Scarlet Witch making him look like he was drunk. However, it's a nice touch by the MCU to reference this small but enjoyable moment in their comic history. The Iron Man films are littered with teasing Easter eggs. As Iron Man flies through Los Angeles in the first cinematic outing of Ol Shellhead, there's a subtle reference to the Marvel dragon-like alien. On the side of the building is a giant poster of Fin Fang Foom. In the MCU, Foom may not be an actual character. Instead, he might be a character in a film, inside a film. Inception-y! If that's the case, we probably won't see he whose limbs shatter mountains and whose back scrapes the sun appear and wreck the MCU. The Master of the New York Sanctum was memorably annihilated by the hands of Caecilius in Doctor Strange. Due to a scene cut from the film, we find out that the mystery magic man's name is Drum. This is in reference to Daniel Drum, the brother of Jericho Drum, aka Dr. Voodoo. In the comics, Drum becomes a ghost and haunts Voodoo for a long time, even helping his brother to become Sorcerer Supreme at one point. Seeing Strange and Voodoo do a magic team-up would be pretty cool. Maybe one day? Maybe not. Hugin and Munin are Odin's ravens. While they have made a few appearances in the MCU but never mentioned by name, it's in the Avengers film where they more closely mirror their comic counterparts. In the comics, the ravens are an extension of Odin. He experiences what the ravens see and hear. Handy! In the Avengers film, they just happen to be seen as Thor is confronting Loki, which keeps Odin up to date on his son's ever-present drama. Well, at least we think that's the case. Odin never clues the audience in on this. As Paul Bettany was forced to have a more active role in the MCU, the end of Jarvis came to pass during the Age of Ultron. Iron Man's AI had been transferred into Ultron's new body, which became Vision. This left Stark a little out of sorts. He didn't have an AI to make quips to anymore, so he set about uploading a new AI. Whilst the AI would later become Friday, Stark was looking through his AI research. One name would make the Marvel buffs happy. Jocasta was scribbled on a memory stick. In the comics, she was originally designed by Ultron to be his wife? Sadly, this is likely to be the extent of Jocasta in the MCU. Before Johnny Storm, Jim Hammond was the original Human Torch. Side note, it's weird how Johnny Storm in the 2005 Fantastic Four film looks like MCU's Captain America. Anyway, Jim Hammond is an android that served with Captain America in World War II as part of the Invaders. During the Stark Expo in Captain America the First Avenger, we get a nice reference to Hammond. As we're shown all the quirky science at the Expo, we see the synthetic man in a similar glass tube as when the original Human Torch was first shown to the world. Due to the potential confusion for the audience between the FF's Human Torch and Hammond's, the MCU will likely never introduce the OG Torch officially. One small scene in the first Guardians of the Galaxy film provided many tantalizing Easter eggs. As we're introduced to the Collector, we get to see his, collection. In one of the glass cages, we see a giant cocoon. This strange artifact refers to Adam Warlock, one of the missing characters from the MCU's version of the Infinity Gauntlet. Warlock does manage to sneak in another referenced appearance in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. In the end credits scene, Ayesha creates a new artificial being. She names it Adam. We then get to see a sleeker version of Warlock's cocoon. The Protector of Soul World has yet to join the MCU properly, but with Guardians Volume 3 back on the table, who knows? Sticking with the Collector's acquisitions, we are treated to an odd sight in one of the glass cages. A dog dressed up as an astronaut. Marvel maniacs will know this hound to be Cosmo. The head of security at Nowhere, Cosmo is a psychic-powered pup. This good boy closely works with the Guardians in the comics. Volume 2 nicely encapsulates the rivalry between him and Rocket by having Cosmo growl at the trash panda from behind the glass. Besides from an end credits scene, more on that later, where Cosmo licks a sulking Collector, he hasn't been seen or heard from since. Samuel Stern will mean little to non-comic fans, but this character in The Incredible Hulk suggested big implications for the Hulk in the future. Due to some shenanigans, Stern gets some of Bruce Banner's blood into an open wound on his head. His brain rapidly expands as he cackles. This shows the birth of the Leader. This hyper-intelligent Hulk villain causes Banner regular chaos in the comic landscape. Yet this is the only time he has been alluded to in 11 years within the MCU. The final in-depth Easter egg hunt in the Collector's collection, Howard the Duck, was seemingly stuffed into a glass cage. He hasn't been seen since 1986. We only see Howard in the end credits of the first Guardians of the Galaxy film. As the collection has been destroyed, Howard mocks the solemn Collector. But we see the Duck again in Volume 2. During a scene on Contraxia, Howard is casually flirting with an alien at a bar. Glad to see the master of Quack Fu got over his incarceration quickly. With Sony and Marvel Studios developing a working relationship, the audience get the thrill of Spider-Man being in the MCU. And with Peter Parker brought into the fold, what about the other Spider-Man, Miles Morales? Well, Spider-Man Homecoming dangled that treat to the audience. As Parker is interrogating Aaron Davis, who in the comics is the Prowler, Davis mentions his nephew. Spider nerds celebrated this offhanded remark, as Davis's nephew is of course Miles Morales. Perhaps we'll get further information in Spider-Man Far From Home. Fingers crossed. Before DC's Swamp Thing, there was Marvel's Man-Thing. Before his face was chiseled onto a building in Sakaar, Man-Thing was first recounted in the MCU in Iron Man 3. The character Ellen Brandt was one of the test subjects for the Extremis virus. Brandt is in fact the wife of Theodore Salas, the man that would become Man-Thing. Brandt even has a scar on her face. In the comics, this is due to when Salas became Man-Thing and she was hit with his acid. The TV show Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. also point out that Man-Thing exists somewhere in the MCU. We just don't know where. Marvel-obsessed comic fans may have picked up on this cheeky reference during 2012 The Avengers film. As we see the building where S.H.I.E.L.D. scientists are examining the Tesseract, we see the term Project Pegasus on a sign. The term refers to the big comic event Civil War. During the story, Tony Stark developed a plan called Project Pegasus. This plan included the project to build Prison 42, a super-powered prison based in the Negative Zone. Thanks, Tony. While Project Pegasus plays a major role in the origin of Captain Marvel's incredible cosmic powers, there is still no mention of the Prison 42 project anywhere else in the MCU. AIM is short for Advanced Idea Mechanics. In the comics, this organization with bad intentions will dress their employees in bizarre beekeeper outfits. AIM was brought into the MCU during Iron Man 3. Aldrich Killian was the founder of this version of AIM. He used his group to devise his plot throughout the film, but the comic faithful version hasn't been included in the MCU. The only similarity between the two versions is the name. Maybe in the future, a MODOK-led AIM will cause all sort of trouble for Earth's mightiest heroes. All we can do is wish and hope this comes to pass. Roxxon is an oil company, which of course in Marvel makes it a shady organization. It appears in the background on a building during the battle between Iron Man and Ironmonger in the first Iron Man film. In Iron Man 2, they sponsor one of the race cars. But it's in Iron Man 3 when Roxxon takes more of a prominent role. The film's villain, Killian, talks about a plan to assassinate the president due to ignoring a massive Roxxon oil spill. In reality, Killian doesn't care about this. He just wants more power. Roxxon has been mentioned a few times in the MCU, but there's little information on them. Roxxon has their fingers in a lot of pies in the comics. Perhaps they can do the same in the MCU. Brought into the Doctor Strange's comic mythos in 2006, Dr. Nicodemus West is one of the newest comic Easter eggs on this list. In Doctor Strange, West is shown as Strange's surgical rival. Yet in the comics, he's an admirer of Strange during his surgical days. He ends up learning some of the secrets to magic, but he leaves his training early. Because of this, he ends up making many mistakes when attempting to heal people with magic. Perhaps in the next Doctor Strange film, West could be involved as a magic menace. Although with Mordo taking the friend-turned-villain role, probably won't happen for West. Raza led the group that held Tony Stark hostage and forced him to make weapons in the Iron Man movie. All fine so far, right? Well, Raza is an offhanded mention to a small comic character. The Starjammers are a group of space pirates that are led by Cyclops' father, Corsair. One of his crew is an alien cyborg called Raza Longknife. The name isn't the only allusion to the comic character. Film Raza ends up suffering a nasty burn on one side of his face. Exactly where comic Raza's face has robotic implants. Nicely done, MCU! Nico Minoru is a part of the vigilante group, The Runaways. Thanks to the Hulu show, they're getting even more recognition now. However, Hulu weren't the first place to reference Nico. In Doctor Strange, we see the Chinese Sanctum. As people are getting ready for battle, we see a woman in the background that is holding a familiar staff. The staff is in fact the Staff of One. It's a powerful magical artifact that Nico uses. The woman holding it in the film? Well, thanks to IMDb's cast credits, we see she is Tina Minoru, the mother of Nico. an excellent allusion to, at the time, Marvel's upcoming TV show. But with the TV show, we won't see Nico make her cinematic debut. With the X-Men franchise being a commercial success at Fox, Marvel decided to get in on that cinema revenue. But as Iron Man came out, they included a respectful nod over to their mutant brethren. As Tony is testing out his Iron Man suit, he wants to push the flying capabilities. He attempts to beat the altitude of the SR-71 Blackbird. Of course, that is the plane that the X-Men go from catastrophe to catastrophe on. Now that the X-Men's film rights are back at Marvel, it would be super exciting to see their gorgeous black airship in all its glory with other MCU characters. Thank you for watching, but did we miss any out? Which forgotten Easter egg would you like to lead somewhere? Drop your thoughts into the comments section below. Also, subscribe to ScreenRant to keep up with great content like this. We'll see you next time.